If you're a Neovim user, then you probably know, or you might know that as of Neovim 0.5, there has been a better support for the Lua API, specifically for the Untitled Lua user config file. Um, and that is actually what we want to take a look at today, how we can organize our plugins, our configurations using Lua, how we can separate everything into different Lua modules. And then we're going to take a look at Packer, which is the plugin manager that we're going to use. And then to take a look at how Packer installs plugins, we're going to install two plugins in this video, which is just a color scheme and a file explorer. And in the videos after this, we're going to actually take a look at more plugins to improve Neovim. So for example, we're going to take a look at the LSP config plugin, some auto completion engines, and also a lot more plugins. But we're going to start simple. So right from the beginning, I want to separate everything into different modules. So this way we stay organized and you don't have to uh, search for everything into one large init.lua configuration file. So by default, Neovim searches for modules inside the Lua folder. As you can see here in this tree directory, you can see that at the top we have the init.lua file and a Lua folder, and inside the Lua folder we can create our different modules. So for example, we have a colors directory, a LSP config directory, a mappings directory. And if inside of the directory you just have an init.lua file, then you can just load this module using the directory name. Else you need to do something like colors.nightfox to load that specific module. And the way you load different configurations files in Neovim is by going into the main init.lua file and then use the require function to load the different modules that we want or the different configurations that we want. So you just use require and then as an argument you pass in the module. So let's take a look at how we can actually do that. So right now I'm inside of my Neovim config folder and I already have an init.lua file but it is still empty because we want to separate everything into its own module. So yeah, you can just create a new folder called Lua, and inside of Lua, the Lua directory, I want to create a bunch of other folders. So for example, I want a different module for my settings, for my key bindings, basically, my colors, config, color schemes, I should say, for our plugins, or yeah, I'm going to call it Packer config actually. We also want a different module for our what else are we going to set up? Oh yeah, our file explorer, which is called nvim3, and I think that should be it for now. Yeah, this should be enough for this video. And now if we take a look at the tree directory, we have the init.lua at the top, the Lua folder, and then the different modules here that we're going to set up. So the first thing that we want to set up is the settings. So Lua settings init.lua. So if you're wondering what fee here is, I usually create an alias for Neovim so I don't have to type Neovim all the time. So yeah, we can just create the init.lua config file inside of our settings module, and here we can start writing our different options. So you probably know that in regular Vim script you would set, for example, expand tab, and set it to and this would enable expand tab. Now we want to do something similar in Lua, and the way we can do that is by using fim.opt. This is basically a Lua table that allows us to set or get different Neovim options. So we can, for example, fim.opt set expand tab. Oh, expand tab like this. So let me delete this one. And we can also do fim.opt smart tab, for example. Smart tab, and then actually we have to assign it a value, in this case a boolean value, because we want this to be enabled. And the way I actually like to do this, instead of using fim.opt all the time, I assign it to a local variable called set. That way all we need to do is just so that way we can write our options this way, which just looks similar to the way we would do this with the traditional film script. So continuing on, we can do shift width and set that equal to, for example, 4. Set that tab stop is 4. You can also do set highlight search is also true. You can set ignore case, set that to true. Set smart case, so in case we are searching for case sensitive words, then it automatically searches for those queries. We can also set for example the split below, split right, set wrap, I want that to be false. And we can also scroll off, so that way, for example, if we are 5 lines above the last line, then it will start scrolling instead of waiting until we're at the actual last line of our file. And we can also set our file encoding to UTF-8. I also want to set our colors, set term UI colors to be true. Our relative numbers is also true, and I also want to set what else do I have? Cursor line. Also want that to be true. Set hidden. For example, we can this is some basic options that we can set. If you actually want to know what each option does, if you're completely new to this, you can just call help for the options. Option list. There's a whole list of options you can take a look at, and what it actually does. So for example, split below, new window from split is below the current one, because by default it actually opens it up at the top for some weird reason. But this is how you would set up your basic options using Lua. And the next thing that we want to take a look at is how we actually can load this using the require function, as we saw earlier in this slide. So if I open up init.lua, I can now call the require function and load settings. Now we can reload this file using the Lua file command. And as you can see, I don't have any errors, it seems. Let me check the health. Check health. So there seems to be no issues with our configuration. So we can continue setting up our plugin manager. So the plugin manager that we want to use is Packer. Yeah, so this is the link to the repository. I will be putting this all in the description. And if we go to quick start, yeah, so you have to clone this repository to somewhere on your pad, depending on the operating system you use. You have to clone either the one for Windows or for Unix and Linux. So I'm on Linux, so I'm gonna copy paste this one, and all you need to do is just clone this. Done, and then we need to set up our plugin specification. So we need to open up. Um, so we need to go to Lua and then plugins, and then also create an init.lua file there. Did I name that plugins? No, I did. I called it packer config and then init.lua. So yeah, inside of this, we want to return require packer and then startup function and then end. If you're wondering where I got this from, this is basically just from the example that they put in the repository. I could have copy pasted everything, but we don't need all of this. I'm only going to use this one here, which is the plugin manager itself. And if we now go back to our main Lua init.lua file and require the packer config module. Did I save this? Yeah. And then let me reload the file again. Seems that I don't have any issues with loading the modules. And then to install a plugin, let's take a look at the documentation. Here, yeah. So you must run this or pack a sync whenever you make changes to your plugin configuration. So you can run packer compile, packer clean, packer install, or packer update, and then or packer sync, which basically does packer update and then packer compile. So what we can do, yeah, because we want to, for example, we want to install a color scheme. The color scheme that I want to use is Night Fox. Yeah. So this is basically a set of color schemes. Actually, the one that I am using is North Fox, and the way we install this is just copy pasting this for Packer, and then I'm gonna reload the file, and then as we saw earlier, we can run Packer sync. And then you can see installed Eden East. So it's pretty fast, and then you can just press Q to quit. And the way to load the actual or enable the color scheme using Lua is, copy paste this line here and then load the specific color scheme that you want. And the options are this here: Dusk Fox, Dawn Fox. And in my case, I want to load North Fox. And we already created the color scheme config module. So let's add a new file inside of that. Lua color scheme. I don't have any files inside of that yet, or any configurations inside of that yet, I mean. So I'm going to create a nightfox.lua config file and then copy paste this here, what I just pasted, and then I want to load NordFox, I mean. And we actually also need to require it inside of the main init.lua file. I think it's called color scheme config. And then because it is not, we don't have an init.lua file inside of that, we just access the specific configuration using the dot notation. In this case, I named it Nightfox. If I now reload, Nightfox not found. Did I save it? Color scheme, Nightfox, color scheme. Oh wait, what did I name? Color schemes. So if I now reload the file, yeah, so now it's working. So that is how you can set up a basic color scheme. Nightfox has a bunch of options actually how to configure. And with a lot of these plugins that are written in using Lua, you basically usually they have documentation on how to actually load the plugin and how to customize it. So and a lot of times it follows this pattern. So require followed by the plugin name and then setup, and then inside of the table you just configure your options. Yeah, so that's for the color scheme. So let's take a look at the last plugin that we want to take a look at for this video, which is the NFM 3 setter. No, NFM 3, this one. So this is a pretty nice file explorer. It's pretty fast, and the one that So to install with Packer, you can copy paste all of this, but because I am going to set it up differently, or somewhat different, because as you can see, it requires optionally it requires the Neovim web dev icons plugin, and that's basically just to have some nice icons in the inside of the file explorer. I use it. I also use it in some other plugins, and that's why actually I load this separately, like this. So let me show you. Packer config init.lua. So for example, the web dev icons I usually just install separately, and then the NFM 3 we can just put it here at the bottom. Oh, I should have used use here. And then we can reload this file and then run packer sync again. Yeah, so you can see now that the Packer installed the Neovim web dev icons and the file explorer. Now we need to follow the pattern again as we did earlier to set up the configurations for NFM 3. And this is basically all the options that you can set here. I'm not gonna set up everything actually, because a lot of them by default are okay for me. But for example, I want the auto close to be true. So that case, in case we close a buffer and we have the file explorer open, Neovim, the file explorer will just close automatically as well. So the way we do that is, let's see. Yeah, we need to create an init.lua file, a config file inside of the nfm3 config module that we created earlier. So we can do that by Lua and then nfm3, and then like this. And then we can require nfim3 and then setup. And then I'm gonna copy paste that one because I want auto close to be true. There's also, for example, the diagnostics. I want that to be true. So diagnostics, and then enable is also true. And I think that's basically all I want to overwrite. Yeah, so that's all I want to overwrite. So let's save this, and I want to open up the main config file because I want to load the Neovim3 configuration file using nvim3 config like this. If I'm not mistaken, that's how we named it. Let's reload. And then we should have access. Yeah, so we now have access to the Neovim3 commands. So if we now toggle, you can see that it opens on the left side. And this is how the file explorer looks like. It's pretty simple. We can open up folders or directories with enter or expand them. We can add new folders or files with A. We can rename with R. We can delete with D. And yeah, that should be enough actually. There's a bunch more options, but I think that should be enough to get you started with this. And instead of actually writing the command manually every time you want to use the file explorer, we might as well immediately um, set the configuration file for our key mappings. So yeah, so we can create a new file for that in Lua for inside of the mappings module. And the way you can set key mappings using Lua is, if I'm not mistaken, fim.api and then nfim. And I need to take a look at my notes for this one. Yeah, so it's set key map. So what this allows us to do, this is basically a function that where we can pass in some arguments to create our key mapping. And we can assign this to a variable called map. And we can right away also create our leader key, fim.g, and then map leader. And I like to have it as space, which we can set like this. And then we can set our key map for the Neovim tree. And the way we do that is like this. So in normal mode, when we press leader and then E, yeah, you can create whatever key mapping makes sense to you. Leader E is what I like for the file explorer. And then the command it needs to run is neovim3 toggle followed by enter. And then what I forgot to set is some additional options, which will be normal map is true and silent I also want to be true. The way why this is a pattern that you will see a lot of people use because these options are actually pretty default to use, or yeah, you will use these options a lot, so that way you only have to pass in the variable here. You only have to reference this once instead of typing this out every time. Oop, accidentally closed that. Now we can load our mappings. I actually forgot how I think I called it mappings. Yeah. yeah, mappings. I call it mappings. So mappings. If I reload this file, no errors. And now if we yeah, if we now do space E, it will toggle the file explorer on or off. Yeah, so this is it for the first video. In the next video, we're going to take a look at some more plugins, specifically LSP config and the another plugin, which is the auto completion engine, and some related plugins to improve our Neovim experience. So yeah, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.